Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. Glad we could have many more faces here and brains hopefully to contribute to our air quality efforts here in Lakeview, town Lakeview in Lake County. I think you're all well acquainted with the efforts in the past here, that our purpose of pulling people together is to work through our annual update to our PM Advance Plan. We're 3 years into a 5-year PM Advance Plan. And each year we provide an update where we are, where we're headed, looking to the future and the needs at the time, what's worked, what needs to work, needs to change. And that's all part of rolling into an update. So what we'd like to do is we're just reviewing where we are, the status with everybody, and then seeking input on the changes and opportunities we have or the needs for the near future. And what we'd like to do then is roll that into this annual update, and then once we all are on board with that, we'll take it in front of the town council and county commission, get some approval there and buy-in, and then submit it on the EPA. So in a nutshell, I don't know if Commissioner, there's anything else.
Oh, don't get him started.
I'm not a few words in. Was there any, you guys both met with the other two commissioners, is anything to convey that they offered?
I know I'm good, some ideas for some additional measures, so we can probably get to, maybe when we get to that section, I can bring up some of what we have, but yes, Peter and I met with the other two commissioners this morning, just to kind of give them an update on what the plan was, and sort of how things are going, and just sort of a preview for when we'll be bringing this back to them in the next month or two for their approval. So it's just good to kind of remind them, what this plan was about, how things are going. So they had some thoughts on it, so I figure we can share that when we get to the sections. Just, some additional ideas for maybe what we might want to include in the plan, or some other potential implementation options for the future. So it was nice. It was nice to touch base with them. And Peter got to meet them, so that was good too.
Yes.
So anyway, so I appreciate you guys coming out. It's always good to see everyone again. So. So I don't even know if we need to do introductions or anything, because I think we all know each other. And since we met Ginger this morning too, so we're all good.
We'll just check, Jess, have you joined us by chance? Potentially Jess Brown from Collins. Flying on the phone. We'll see.
So I'll just kind of do a little more background, because I know some of you are really familiar with it, and probably, actually I know all of you are familiar with it since you were on the original PM Advance Committee and things like that. But part of what EPA does is they set standards for fine particulate PM 2.5, and any area not meeting the standard, they can designate as non-attainment or not meeting the standard. And so when that happens, then the area is required to put together what's called a non-attainment plan, and then those things they're very large, all-encompassing. They have a lot of rules and regulations, restrictions on industry. They also can impose a lot of restrictions just on residents in terms of things that they have to do, because you are required to bring levels down. Fortunately, Lakeview has not been designated non-attainment, and we're trying to make sure that we keep Lakeview out of non-attainment. And so even though we have some high monitoring powers, and I'll show that to you guys in a minute for those of you who weren't able to see that last time, they did offer the option of this PM Advance program, which is a voluntary program that communities can enter into, saying, okay, we're going to put together a plan, not quite the same scope as a non-attainment plan, that shows what voluntary measures the community is going to take to bring levels down. And by doing so, EPA will say, you know what, we'll hold off on that non-attainment designation for a little bit, just to see if you guys can bring your levels down as much as possible. So this is what this is. And if you recall, 3 years ago, or 4 years ago when we started this, we had a year's worth of meetings every month, which you guys were great in helping us develop the original plan. And so we submitted that to EPA. They thought it was great, actually. They put it up on their website. They used it as models for other communities. So I wanted to make sure I gave you guys that shout out, and I don't think I ever did, that they really thought it was a really well put together plan, very thought out, great information, things like that. So big pat on the back to all of you.
They thought it was a great plan, but was there any points that to say maybe point A and B could be enhanced?
They did have some thoughts on that, but they liked the comprehensiveness of it, so they liked sort of the thought that went into it, including emissions inventory, so showing what sources were, and just the thought in terms of some of the strategies. And they also had some additional thoughts for what they could, you could do in terms of enhancing certain programs, whether it's doing change-outs or doing more education and outreach, which I think we touched on a little bit in the plan. And so as part of this PM advanced plan that we submit to them, they also request that we give them an annual update. And so we missed the first year update, so we sent them actually an update last year, so we kind of called it the 2-year update. So that was the first update that we sent to them. And so now we're doing our 3rd-year update right now. And so that's sort of the purpose of this meeting, is to kind of just say, okay, here's sort of how the last year's gone, and here's what we're thinking of doing, and just sort of assessing where has air quality gone, is there anything else we need to change, or is there anything else we need to improve upon, things like that. And then EPA will take a look at it, they'll probably send some comments back to us that we may want to consider or not, and then we'll keep marching forward. And I think right now the prognosis is good, because when we looked ahead 5 years, we had sort of an idea of what the emissions might be, and right now the numbers that are coming in are below our projections, so that's a good thing. And so we still have some work to do. I think maybe we'll hand out some of the monitoring data, just so you guys can take a look at sort of how Lakeview's been doing. It kind of, I think, helps provide some perspective.
Whoops, I think there's 2 there.
So this just kind of gives you an idea of the monitoring data so far. So this is over the past 7 years. And as you can see, 2013, we had that big blip, so not of it, around 94, and the standard is that red line, so that's 35 micrograms per meters cubed for the PM 2.5 standard. And so compliance, so the way EPA determines if you're meeting the standard is based on a 3-year rolling average. So they look at the last 3 years of available data. So we're looking at 2014 to 2016 right now to see how it's doing. And as you can see, it's good. I think their overall average is 31.5, so they're below the standard. So we're seeing a downward trend. So I think that's great news since 2013. We do have some available data from 2017 that shows that January was a kind of a rough month for us. So we are currently over the standard. We still have the rest of 2017 to go, but I think we'll definitely get some things in action to kind of make sure that we keep numbers as low as possible. But overall, I think the trend is showing that these efforts are helping for the most part. And so on the other page, it just has more specific data, and I think the very last page just kind of shows how things went across the entire state for the month of January. So you can see that it's cold, and there were some stagnation events. So not only Lakeview had some tough time, but Prineville, and let's see.
Klamath had a little bit.
Klamath had a little
They did pretty well overall. They had a little bit of a hit.
So just looking at the days, for Lakeview, there was definitely a stagnation event.
Lee Burns had a couple days in there also, that used on this chart.
Rachel, in regards to the cover sheet, monitoring for the past years, since we have still a little bit of this year to offset and maybe come below that, there were 3 years in a row, does that bring us out of what it used to be? Maybe that was when it was PM 2, whatever. After 3 years of attainment?
Well,
Or
so-
below it? I mean, do we have to continue?
Well,
I know
see-
we should continue trying and striving to.
Right, so we
There are-
always want to try and stay below the standard, because, I mean, just because you see health effects above it, and you can even, others can see health effects below the standard. So we want to keep the air as clean as possible. Since you're not officially a designated non-attainment area, there's no huge
Oh, real window.
thing where you have to get below it by a certain date or
Okay.
anything like that, like we did under the PM10 days. But, in general, we want to keep the air clean, so
Sure.
you want
Okay.
to shoot for, as far below the standard as you can. But, so like I said, the good news is the trend is going down, and I think, you're gonna see some fluctuations over the years anyway, just based on, weather patterns and just a myriad of other factors. But I think the overall goal is to try and, put strategies in place that'll help us weather those fluctuations, literally.
And looking at the last, if we don't have anything further, any higher than the remainder of 2017, it's a similar average to where we were for the prior 3 years. If you look at the bar chart, the height is fairly similar to that of 2014. So the average would move us too far. Our key is to not have, to avoid anything above standard, of course, and especially anything over the third highest value of 40 micrograms.
Yeah, so if you keep the rest of your clean, then our overall 3-year average will still be below, so that's a good thing, so. Yeah, so any questions real quick? We're on.
The dates we monitor from, is it 1st of November or 1st of October?
So we
So
monitor,
April first.
so we monitor year round, and it's 1 every 3 days is when they monitor. So, let's see here, but, where we typically see the highest levels of PM is basically November through the end of February, just because that's when, it's when you see more wood heating activities, when you start.
So I'm definitely curious then on what the monitor was picking up during the fire season and all the smoke was down in the community in the summer.
Oh, yeah, no, and
And those numbers are bumping us over, or they are exempt somehow?
So they will bump you over, but EPA has, they have this thing called exceptional events where they will remove the data if it's due to an exceptional event such as a wildfire.
Mhm.
And since you guys have been inundated by wildfire smoke, that data does not count towards.
Or even prescribed burns.
Well, not prescribed burns, they do not consider that a natural event because they figure that is controllable. And I know
Well,
that.
we call ahead, and we worked out that agreement with,
Tolerance.
Right.
and also the Forest Service to make sure that they don't burn on even the yellow day, but
Right.
even if they don't, and it still gets to town, and we, feel the effects of it, it's kind of uncontrollable,
Right.
Event.
and it's, in a way, because their window for burning is such a short window as well, and then with those, it's just frustrating to me that this summer has been smokier than heck, and I remember Janine, you saying many of your friends, or some friends of yours certainly have, health conditions with air, and it's like, I mean, obviously, we're a group that can only be focused on what we can be focused on.
Right.
But when we talk about the air quality that we had during the summer, it was way worse than any part of the winter. At least from my perspective, living here 6.5 years, than the winters that we have. And it's been horrible. I mean, the visibility alone tells you that you shouldn't be breathing the air that's out here.
But it's still that same, I guess, PM 2.5.
It is.
Particularly wouldn't matter.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
smoke is smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're gonna have the health effects no matter what it's coming from. I know, and it's challenging, and I know it's frustrating too, when we were telling, especially if you're telling your friends in town, oh, you can't burn on, you're using your wood stove, but then you see all this forest fire smoke coming in, and things like that, so.
Well,
it's a
they don't
challenge.
seem to, I mean, there are times of the year that in the fall, perhaps if they do some prescribed burns, or if there's an event.
And sometimes those prescribed burn smoke doesn't arrive here till 24 hours later, too.
Right. And they're not supposed to, I mean, and even under the smoke management plan, that we have that.
And I'm
You know
not,
all about too.
I'm not bringing up those issues, because I think we're handling it correctly, and, you know, something happens, it happens, but,
Shame we're.
you know, it's just really tough on this group, whenever I think about the true air quality in the summertime, when we want to be outside playing and recreating and not in our homes. And in the winter, you're typically in your home and you're not breathing the same air that's outside of your home. You know, those inversions, we've talked about those so many times, and that's uncontrollable, you know, in certain ways. Obviously, when we say it's a red day, we're not supposed to be burning.
Right.
But if it wasn't a red day until we had all that same smoke that's already there, it's just tough because, you know, we're in a pretty depressed, at least, area in economics for people to continue to take advantage of some of the programs. It turned out it wasn't really a very good program in my opinion in the last go. I mean, there was a lot of people who weren't able to take advantage of it because it was not cost effective to do so. When they were still having to pay $5,000-$10,000 to get some other kind of source put in their house. And, I mean, even the people that had money couldn't really do that, you know, so it just seemed like a lot of money was sitting there for a long period of time. You know, I think there is good progress being made, it's just, I think it's so uncontrollable, and that's the opinion I think we're gonna have until, you know, go through with all this.
Oh, yeah.
Because those inversions and, you know, until we don't burn any smoke whatsoever, I mean, it's crazy, because you see a lot of single digits, and then you see a 50 and a 40 and almost a 60, and you're like, really, was it that much different? I mean, it wasn't like everybody that had uncertified stoves were only burning those days. The same people are burning their stoves every day, it's just that we must have had some crazy inversion that, in a 3 to 5 day window in there, and then the monitor hit it.
And working back to our program, and what, you know, part of our purpose here too is what was working, what didn't work, and, you know, do we get the word out, right, clearly enough, and it's hard to say if people were using stoves during that time that shouldn't have, that didn't get the word, or we called it a day, like a yellow day and not a red. So it's tightening up some of those strategies. Try to make sure, because you could also look at those and say, hey, only a couple of days. Actually, that we missed the boat there somewhere, but we changed to go move beyond that. And most of the time, well, they're burning allowed in the stoves, but more limited time to focus on those type of days that we need to. And the strategies will get us there.
I think the plan's been operated properly. I think it's all working. I think some of the things that we're seeing here, it has a lot to do with the aging population, and they're dying off, and then the stoves aren't being reinitiated because of it. New ownership, and I think a combination of change out and population passing on, you're gonna see another good change this next year. I'm pretty confident. I think notification has been perfect. I mean, everybody hears it on the radio, everybody sees it on the boards, and the light, I mean, it's everywhere. So I think it's been implemented perfectly. And I think we're gonna see some changes as the population rolls over, which is going to, we seem to be losing a lot of people real quick. And that's part of our plan, was to let the wood stoves go for the older people, and then when they pass on, then that's eliminated. I don't know, I'm pretty pleased with those.
And a lot of that's monitored by new home loans with, you know, they have to be certified before you're gonna get a new home loan, so that's how we're taking care of some of that problem. Or it's just completely removed.
I'm seeing a lot of people, mostly my age, maybe a little younger, that are getting away from it because it's a hassle.
Yeah.
And they're sick of it. And since we have the heating systems, remote head heating cooling system, you get both comfortable in the summer and warm in the winter. And it's cheap. I heat my 2,500 square foot house for $100. So it's not worth it to anybody to get wet and deal with the mess and the equipment and the wear on my truck. So a lot of people are doing that. And I think this whole program's working quite well.
Yeah, and, you know, there's some challenges. I think we've all talked about the challenges too, because there are some people who just, you know, won't give up their wood heat. And there's also just sort of the tradition. I mean, I think Darren, you and I have talked a lot about it. Just about how, you grew up, cutting wood with the family, and that's still a very popular tradition. We don't want to take that away from people. It's just a matter of,
You take it away from me anytime.
At some point.
I'm sick of it. Back in the day, I'd had a stove that I had to have 14 cord to get through the winter. It was an old fire pit, and it had holes all over it, and you just burnt wood. Now, if you don't get tired of doing wood 14 a year,
Good exercise back in those days.
I was gonna say, yeah, sure too. That's a form
Seems
of
like
school.
pollution.
Right, so I think too, it's just a matter of figuring out how can we, manage what we do have. So if some of it, just doing more education and outreach with folks, making sure people do have the clean, dry wood that they have, then I know what County Corrections gives out to the seniors and veterans and things like
that right there, your comment, that's gonna be an issue, dry.
Right,
This whole town is not up for, they don't have the money to cover it, they put tarps on it and it gets blown off. That's an issue all over town. I don't know how you're gonna change that.
so here I'll just bring up just something completely, separate from that, that I'll let you guys know about. So DEQ did receive from the legislature $250,000 to give to communities dealing with wood smoke. And so we haven't figured out how we're gonna distribute that money yet, but I think one of the things we're thinking of is maybe having various areas, specific areas, submit a very simple proposal of, here's what we'd like to do with the money, let's say $50,000 or $100,000. One of them could be tarps, if the town feels like that's something that's important enough, or it could be something else. But I wanted to make you aware of that, because that is something that we will be notifying all the various
Well,
communities.
see, they make those plug-and-play covers where it's steel tube
Mhm.
with metal on top, and you could have one that would cover 4 cord of wood for a little bit of nothing.
Hmm.
If you were to buy people one of those to cover their wood piles, so you got a good deal. That, you're really gonna change that right there.
So,
And they're very cheap. I think for $700 you can have a kit.
and that might be a really good thing for whomever, that we can get to kind of do an inventory of who really needs that the most, and not rely upon those people coming to us, because if we can go out and try to find some of them.
Oh, if you put the advertisement on the radio station, they're gonna come to you.
They'll be
They,
like,
they don't
Yeah.
like breaking up the ice and snow in their wood piles.
Oh, yeah.
They'll come get that. And the other thing that can be done is we can get the DOC with a package to where the prisoners would assemble them.
Or the prisoners, or have the high school students build them. And
Well, they
maybe
should
do a
get something
donation to
in
the
return, the
school.
kids. Yeah, you
Community
can donate to
service,
the kids.
yeah.
But if we do the prisoners, then we'll have that fee built in there, which they charge, and they'll just come out and put it up.
And I just mean for inventory purposes, for potentially putting in a grant to try to get some of this money, we need to kind of have an idea how many we're gonna need. I mean, if we're talking 100,
Well, that could be
200,
something that
300.
somebody could just drive around in the alleys. and
Yeah, that's what I
look
mean.
for plow
It's a
wood.
simple 2-day
Count.
kind of thing.
No, that's the only
Can't
thing you
figure
can
it
do.
out.
Okay, who's dinging? Is it me?
No, for some reason I'm going to.
But, so that's just,
Well,
that's
that's
just
a
food
cool-
for thought. But I wanted to let you guys know
But
about.
250,000 spread to
A lot of good
100 communities who are in the same boat we're in is kind of tough.
Right, it is, and so I think part of what we're trying to figure out is if we're gonna kind of cap it and say, okay, we're gonna give $50,000 grants to communities or $100,000 grant, I mean, and I think that's something that we're still trying to sort out, and we'll probably be talking to various communities, so, about, what would make sense, because it's not a lot, but we wanna help.
So can you tell me how many people are in this, PM 2.5 advanced program? Would they take priority at least?
So
Everyone's
this is just for,
under, isn't it?
yeah, so this is just for the state of Oregon, so this is separate from,
Because there's a few communities that are non-attainment.
right.
Yeah.
And they would definitely be top priority.
Right.
And then there's gonna be a few like us who are in
Yes.
this.
So I think part of that is, we have to develop criteria for who would, how we prioritize it. So I personally, I would think that we kind of prioritize the non-attainment in areas like Lakeview and Prineville, where you're violating, or were violating, but have not yet been designated non-attainment. And then there are other communities too that are out there,
Well,
so.
I have a problem with that. If they're non-attainment, that means they're not working at it. They probably really don't care. Why would you do that? Unless they had an actual plan sitting in place that was reasonable, that was working, they were trying, why would you want to promote them by giving them a grant?
Right, well, it's because because the data show that they were non-attainment, but they had to come into compliance. So now everyone, so those non-attainment are now meeting the standard, but they still have that.
Oh, they're saddled with it.
They're
but
still
it's
saddled,
working.
so they're under
Like
that.
Klamath.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Klamath,
Klamath has that
Oak Ridge.
20 EPA
All
that
right.
they're
They are
stuck.
working.
When we were in non-attainment,
Yeah.
If it wasn't
we
for
had a
this
plan to.
option of PM
So
advance,
you guys
we
would
would
be
be
able to-
out there, yeah.
Yeah, and so you'd have all the economic restrictions and things like that, and I know you guys don't want that, so.
So do you have any idea?
The covers, I don't know what to call them. It's just a tube frame.
We're talking $500, $1,000.
Yeah, for, what you want to figure 4/4 wood,
Mhm.
and one that size would probably just be $600-700. But guys, we need to get somebody that has the franchise that can tell you the cost,
Yeah.
and you need to include
Order
3
of all.
sides of metal to make it all happen.
So do you know, do you have any timeline on when you might be
So-
releasing requests?
Probably beginning of next year, realistically. I just have to get it together.
Assessment could be made here in our,
Yes.
Yeah.
our community of those that don't meet, and so they're probably the ones that are burning the liquid in the first place, the ones that we see smoking every year. And so, in any community, it would be that way. Do you think it's too far-fetched to include something such as shelters?
No, I mean,
in
this is
requests for
where,
grant money?
honestly, this money is open, so, I mean, that's why it's sort of, we want communities to say, this is what we think would really help our community, so it could be something like.
So if we were to
shelters
put
or
together through our assessment of how many really
Yeah,
could
right.
use it, and then come to you with, we need, I
Right.
don't know, I don't think it would be 100, but maybe
Yeah.
50, 50 here in
Oh,
Lakeview.
certainly.
It's gonna cost this much money at 500, and then we're
Right.
gonna have the, I don't know, the high school industrial
Mm-hmm.
team put together these things for them and give them.
You've got to be careful now,
$100 to-
when you design
Well-
this, you don't want to design it to where Carl fit underneath it, because that's what they'll use.
They'll use it for that, that's true, that's, I was thinking that
So
too.
you just want something that's only good for wood.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so but I mostly mention it just because I want you all to be thinking about it, because it is something that'll be coming, and so then you're prepared for it. And we definitely don't want to make the proposal really cumbersome for you all, because I don't want you to have to spend tons of time, but, just something thought out, because,
And what's the name of the program?
oh, we haven't named it officially, it's just $250,000 that we.
Rob's benefit fund.
It's called Rachel's Vacation Fund to Hawaii.
And is it, Rachel, is it just this year, or is it looking like it might stay in the budget for the next couple of years?
So it's only for this biennium, so, and it was sort of an unexpected thing that we got.
And it's only
Only
250,000.
250,000.
So just divided by X number, it's not that much
Right, it's not in the whole
for
city.
2 years.
But, it's you guys could, the money will be available for the next 2 years, so like I said, I'm hoping to kind of get something out beginning of next year, so the communities have time to implement whatever they may want to implement, and then we'll probably want to come back and then we can go back to the legislature and say, look, this is what we did with 250,000, look at all the
Great
things we did. Give us some more money for the next biennium. So that's my ultimate goal. Because, as you all know, 250,000, it doesn't go very far, but at least it's something.
Even if it's prioritized to the needs and the projects that are being proposed.
Right.
I think y'all shared with us when you were here last time that for the climate, that did the wetwood exchange.
Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge, okay, I knew it was another community,
Mhm.
but that helped their air quality immensely, so.
It did. It did. It's one of many things that they've been doing in Oak Ridge, one of the other non-attainment areas.
Rob, what would it cost to have an employee put together a $500 kit for, man hours, something like that?
Well, I would assume that $300.
So $800 per, so we need about 40,000 of that money?
Well, I'm just looking
There's our official
here.
request, no?
Shelter Logic builds something, it isn't metal. I haven't figured out. Shelter Logic shed in a box with auger anchors, blah, blah. Different sizes, 12 by 12 is $289.99.
How much?
$289.99.
Made out of wood.
No, it's some sort of tarp, really heavy-duty tarp material. And I was trying to find out what that is, but I haven't found it yet.
Well, what happens with the tarp is it ends up, after the third year, it's gone.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
it's-
you
We're
want
better
to
off,
jelly.
yeah, we
If
need a
it's
steel
metal-
frame and metal roof.
We can work on that and try to get some of
Has
that.
a
Yeah.
steel.
Yeah, but so anyway, so it's just food for thought, but I wanted
But
to toss
just to
that out
give you an
there.
idea.
We're gonna put Ginger on a bicycle and she can ride the alleys and.
Thank you.
Well, one of the first cut is the prison cuts a bullet, and community service delivers to many. And they should be able to identify which of the senior
Right.
citizens that
They're
are
out in the shelter.
It's been on my list for months to.
The senior
Part of
center, yeah. they
Senior
have-
center, yeah.
I
That-
think I
That's pretty
have
good
in my applications, I think there's a few that I have in there that had questions about their wood because their wood was wet. I'll have to go back through and look, which is not a problem at all.
Well, good, it looks like we've got some ideas going, so that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're okay, I wanted to move on to the plan, talk about the plan. Was there some other thoughts or questions you wanted?
I have a question.
Sure.
If you would help me.
Oh, certainly.
So we had, we called 3 red days,
Mhm.
and yet, you know, we have several exceedances.
Mhm.
Is there any correlation between, should we have identified more red days?
Probably, I think is, I know, Dawn, you were learning this.
It's okay.
And I'm not trying to blame you by any means, it's tough.
By all means, you know, I'm still learning, and,
Yeah.
you know, pointing those things out are very helpful. It's the only way I'm gonna learn it
Yeah.
is, you know, I made a mistake, I didn't call enough red days, and, you know, and at least we can show the numbers, but it was like I was telling them, I want to go in and print off every day those numbers that I check. And give a copy to
Keep a binder.
everybody.
Yeah, so then we can kind of keep track of, you know, what the call was and what actually happened, and then we can kind of track how well we've done. That'd be a great, I thought it was a great
What
idea by Dawn.
should I
so.
have done?
Learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Don't have that, at least we have reconstructed exactly which day, what, you know, kind of history for last year or earlier this year. Don't know, we have that quite, but we will going forward.
And you guys are already probably taking care of this in town, but there's gotta be some level of cross-training that happens, so if you're out, you know, a week or a day or whatever, that someone is still knowing how to handle what you're handling.
Somebody will have to learn.
Yeah, somebody's gonna have to learn, but that's what.
It's
you know,
gonna
I
have to
mentioned that to
happen.
Roberta last, when she was in the last meeting we had, and it just has to happen. That's
Right.
something
Which is
she'll need to
understandable.
oversee, yeah.
And if I need to,
Yeah.
you know, we'll find a way to do it.
Do we have Jess on the line?
Yes, I'm sorry, I got chimed in a little bit late because some the Oregon meeting just broke away, loaded late, and then so loaded late chimed in.
Just want to let people hear your voice and know you're truly there. So we have, 9 or so of us here. Most of the committee gets out, sets up the introductions, we just keep rolling along because it's a short meeting,
Yeah.
but we're just jumping into the plan review, the update review. Rachel said, can you hear okay?
Yeah, I can hear fine.
Excellent.
I don't put my foot because I'm in the U of O's white stag building, so I'm kind of out in the hallway, so I'll just put myself on mute unless I want to find out something.
Okay.
That sounds good. So what you have before you is sort of the latest update to the plan. And so I just kind of went through and used the model from last year in this updated part. So what I'm mostly just going to do is hit the highlights, because I think we don't need to go through line by line, and I'm sure you guys don't want to go through it line by line either. So probably I'll just start with page 2, where we talk about the monitoring results. So, you know, I just added the latest data for 2016, because that's the last full year's worth of data that we do have. So, as I mentioned, you can see sort of the trending down. And then I also just sort of allude to how 2017 is going, and basically mentioned that, you know, it looks like we may violate the standard for 2017, but we still have the rest of the year to go. But, you know, sort of the reason is that, you know, there were some staffing changes and, you know, learning about the forecasting. So But that we're on it, we're doing the training and making sure Donna's fully supported, because we've got to make sure you know what to do and how to do it, and, and also just, and with Larry being gone during that time too, so there wasn't anyone also to give you that support, so, I felt for it, because I was going, oh, you poor thing, you're all alone. So I think for the rest of 2017, I think it'll be looking good, so, but I wanted to acknowledge that to EPA, so then they aren't surprised next year if they see the numbers. And then on page 3, it just provides more updated figures about the 3-year average, because that's what they use to determine compliance. And then I'm in section 2 of the emissions update. So it just sort of talks about what we had projected for 2019 and then where we are right now. These actually are not the latest numbers, because I'm still getting them from our emissions inventory guys. So that needs to be updated, but just in general, I think the numbers are going to show that they are about the same or below the 2019 projection. So I think that's a good sign, is that we're coming below what we thought we would be. So I think we're going to see a big drop in wood combustion, as well as some other, I think even industrial permitted sources, because I think we had estimated that the hydrogen plant might be here and it's not anymore. So you're going to see a big drop in that, because we're going to take that out. So it looks good for now. I'll just stop real quick, see if I have any questions so far. Okay. So next is more of the meat of the program, and that's where we talk about the implemented strategies. And so we've got the mandatory wood stove curtailment program, on just how that's still going on, and there's still someone providing advisory calls between November and February, and warning letters get issued if there's anyone who's not complying with it. Let's see here, and I just also provided some updated numbers on just how many calls we made this the last wood heating season. So just so EPA knows where we are, and just how we continue compliance surveys to make sure people are adhering to it. So things are still progressing. And then if we go to page 5, I provided updated numbers on the wood stove changeout program and weatherization, so that's great, still going on. It's been extended to the end of this year. The good news is that there's been 104 stoves total changed out, so that's great. And got a number of alternate heating systems in homes, so that's also good, so we don't have to worry about the wood, or for those who still really want their wood stove put into things so that they would still have their wood stove to burn, except for those red days, because they had to sign an agreement saying that they would only burn, use the non-wood heating source on the red days to make sure that they didn't run into problems with compliance. And I think they're hoping to do an additional 10 change-outs to spend out the rest of the money. That's good news there. And then open burning prohibitions, just how that ordinance is still in effect and happening. And then under public education and awareness, just sort of what the educational efforts are so far. And this is sort of where I wanted to kind of stop a little bit and see if there's anything new or additional that we wanted to add. I think I did, let's see here, we changed the curtailment programs, just, we talked about education, burning properly, wood storage, follow-up calls to people who've done change-outs. I didn't know if we wanted to add any more specifics about what other education outreach we wanted to do. Maybe there's an opportunity to give out the wood with corrections, have someone go with the house, and I realize that's staff time, to talk to the person about, hey, let's make sure you're burning wood, and this is what you need to do, things like that. And so here's an opportunity for us to talk about anything if we wanted to, or you can leave it as is. So I'll leave it at that.
So the 3.4 on the second sentence, DEQ provided funding to the
Yes.
county.
Mm-hmm.
Did they?
We
Or
did.
was,
Who received that money?
But I guess you guys did. Yeah, it's through the town. So
Through the
it's
town.
the
It's monies
grant.
that have come each year.
Yeah, so it's monies that come each
Okay.
year. So it's
So that's-
$15,000.
that's
Oh,
an added issue, that should
So
say the
it's
town.
not
Oh, yes,
actually
it
the
should be the
county.
town, but thank you.
Because I
Inside
wanted
the
to
county.
know. what the county was doing with the funding you're giving
I
them.
would like to know too. What my two cohorts do. They're in Hawaii.
I was gonna say, they're the ones who are going to Hawaii after all.
Yeah.
So thank you for that edit.
And if I could, I go back to the shared house wood stove.
Uh-huh.
So the best that my memory serves me, we had at least one block grant prior to the funding that we're using now. And we were using the paybacks of those loans were being reused, were set aside in the budget and reused to fund additional change-outs. And I wondered what the status of that was. My understanding was that the grant required us to use that money, isolate the funds and continue to use those. And I don't know if that's for a certain period of time or if we still recognize that money in the budget, so that it would be in the plan that while it would be a much smaller program, we would still have some monies that we were utilizing for change-outs in the future, even if it's only half a dozen or something.
No, I remember that block grant, so
Okay.
I do. But I don't remember how many, if it's, because it sounds like it hasn't been utilized lately, or if it's still there.
Right, I know that the town air quality committee was responsible for approving, so I know that there were some paybacks
Mhm.
that then we reissued additional loans on, and at some point. wasn't
So the
happening
loans
anymore.
were, explain the loan process. I'm sorry, I'm totally,
Sorry.
If
A
there were certain
neophyte.
individuals who could not, through the grants, match what the grants
Gotcha.
required,
okay.
we would loan them money through the town's
And then they pay back
fund.
and then that would be available. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So a subset of the.
Right.
It was not a large fund, but there was some money set aside for that
So-
purpose, and there was an account that, we had a line item on our budget, and I can go back and.
And it was
look a
through the
few years
town.
ago and
But
see
when was the
where it
payback?
disappeared.
Was it the sale of the
I don't
house
know,
or was
maybe
it
it's still there now,
ongoing?
the current budget.
Actually,
There's a
well,
payment.
Like
there
instant?
were two different ways. They were paying it back.
Yeah.
You pay it back off their water
Or
bill.
it could be a lien, it could be
A lien against, it could
against
be
the
placed
house.
against their home if in fact
If-
they didn't pay it back.
Yeah, exactly.
No
So
transfer.
there's
would
probably
take
some
place.
liens still.
I think
out
it just
So-
didn't follow
Yeah,
Alberta on that and just see what.
Yeah.
So that
Two
was
cents,
with
yeah.
the first program?
there. Actually, this is the third.
Oh, okay.
I don't even remember the town manager's name, was Fred or something, way back.
And the initial one,
I mean, it's kind of embarrassing that we gave most of it, if not all the money back because it didn't get implemented.
mhm.
Or it,
For the first
Oh,
one?
yeah,
for the first
well,
one.
hundreds
So
of
then the one
thousands,
I'm
yeah,
Yeah.
just,
referencing is the second one.
Sure.
where it was utilized, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know even how to,
Interesting.
so the point was that that could be built into the plan, that it's an effort on our part, but I wasn't sure what the status was. and-
We need to check with Roberta when she gets back.
Well, a lot of that comes down to staffing. If staff doesn't know how to work up the loan or, track
Well, first off, for a
reimbursement
request,
payments.
and we haven't had a request, because see what we did, and that's probably why we haven't had a request, we turned all of that grant money handling to the South Central Oregon
This one.
Economic Development. And so they've taken care of it now for about 2 years in a row, I think, that they've handled all of those monies. So we haven't had grants requests through here, or there were a couple that came back through, but they asked, and I recall that was this last season, they asked for not having to live up to the burn days. They wanted to be able to burn on grant days, and we said, sorry, we can't fluctuate from that, we're not going to. And so but that's the only request. They couldn't afford the monies it would take to, to put the systems into their homes. But we didn't go ahead and give them approval. But that's the last request that we've had of that kind of situation, so.
I think the first thing, my first question was, are those monies coming in and are they earmarked? So that we know it's
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
And you're absolutely right, Darwin, you brought up a good comment that, we were staffed then to do those internally.
Yeah.
And if those monies are available, do we work with Ginger to see that it's just
So
incorporated.
Ginger and I just were
She's
in a
doing
meeting
her.
a couple of weeks ago about the Regional Housing Center for Klamath and Lake, and we were talking specifically about some of this stuff, and so with the block grants and some of the opportunities that are just not being utilized, that the monies are sitting there available, and yeah, we'll end up losing them if we don't use them, so, you know, I think Ginger and I ought to follow up with Roberta on this and just see where we're at, and if SCROD's really, you know, kind of funneling that money through this new group that Ginger and I are on, that we just need to get staff to be promoting it, and then, you know, it's one of those, you know, options that we have to kind of further education and further, you know, because that group doesn't, it's not just for homeowners, it's potentially for businesses too that might have, this
So
need.
maybe what I can do is just touch base with you in a week or two, just to see if you guys have found any more information, because if it's something that we could include in the plan, I think that'd be great. If not, that's fine too, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd forgotten about it, so. That's another thing that we can point to, saying, well, here's what we're gonna do, when the funding's gonna end, we still have the block grant that can be utilized.
And it's just better understanding what, yeah, how that money can be spent and who's gonna staff actually handle it, and following through and making sure that the money's coming back in, and it's not just going to the general fund, and it's actually
Right.
going into
Because there could
the
be some
appropriate.
liens out there that are still
Right.
in place.
And if it's federal dollars, it's tied, it has to go back into that program.
How does that lien process work? Normally you have to renew them.
That's why I was wondering if it's already gone.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
if you don't renew them, then they go away.
Detective work.
I can go talk to Bob, you know, and see where, because he does all our,
Yeah, that Paul would be good to talk to.
that would be a good start.
And that,
Like, do
him,
you-
Roberta, you know, one of us, I mean, 'cause that's what always happens with turnover in staff, you lose a lot of that internal.
so Don, because I was
Yeah.
looking for planning records yesterday on the second floor,
Mhm.
there's a file in there, this goes back to when Christie was here. And there's a whole bunch of clear wood stove files up there.
And that's
That are
probably
closed.
about the last time that we had a request
So,
for funds. So
that might be a
tell you
source of-
little bit,
it
yeah.
might
And it
tell
might be
you-
just about.
Find time to do it is always the key.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because once that knowledge is lost, doing
In
the
the
learning, it
archives.
takes double, triple the amount of time to figure out how to do it.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. So let's see here, so public education awareness, anything else under that?
So the one in the purple talks about the flag program.
Right.
Future efforts.
So that's under future efforts, so,
It seems like that, we really haven't implemented all that much yet.
well, and I know that was mentioned at the last meeting about possibly doing it, so I put it in here, but I wasn't sure if that was still something that,
I still think it's appropriate and good. It wouldn't take much for people to start recognizing, oh, the flag, instead of looking as they're driving the road, off of the road, up
Right.
into the window.
Much more noticeable.
Yeah, because, I mean, the MC is a great corner, truck riding at the school still, at, I mean, you know, when the weather's bad, we don't want them going up to the water tower and, you know, putting a flag below our regular flag, but at the courthouse would be simple to put one there too.
Does the fairgrounds reader board?
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
reader
a lot
board, we
of
talked a
people
little bit
see
about that
that,
too.
yeah.
That new
Yeah,
reader
the
board
reader board.
would be really good to just, you know,
Is
it could be
there a-
something that might be permanent, that you could leave almost on the corner too.
Is there a way that you can do a public announcement that would penetrate all Facebook pages?
No, you have to go through
You have to
and
do
do each
friend
one.
or something like that to make
You have
that
to do
happen?
each one or be an administrator. Yeah.
because I post it on the Lakeview announcements.
Well, it's just that most of this town's on Facebook anyway. And if you had it come up on everybody's Facebook page, then you're gonna get a lot more coverage than any reader board or flag or anything else, because they're.
And you're saying you're doing that already, but you're probably only doing that on yellow and red
Yeah,
days.
but,
though.
yeah, there's
You'd
only
have to
certain.
blanket the
Yeah, you're
whole.
not
Like
doing it
I
on green
do.
days.
Huh?
You're not doing it on green.
No, I
days.
tell, if it's
Oh,
green,
every
it's
day.
green.
It's
If it's
posted,
yellow,
yeah.
yeah, it has to be marked every day, even the phone number, there's an answering machine, they can call in. There's Mike Warren with the radio station, I mean, I,
Green, yellow, or red, whatever it is, it's
And-
on there every day.
we've posted
A
it
lot
in
of
the
work for
newspaper,
Green Day.
please call and let us,
Does
ask
that
us about
not
the
seem like
advisory.
a lot of work when it's a Green Day?
It is, but,
It makes people think about it, right? It makes people think
Yeah,
about it.
I guess that's true, but
well, and there's the website, they get on there and look at that. And if they don't update their cookies on there, then it's gonna tell them it's a red day because they don't update their own system. And then they're calling me, you have to update your cookies, guys.
well, just looking at these numbers we had throughout last winter, we had only 3 in yellow and only 3 red, and that just seems like
Well,
I mean,
It keeps people.
90% of the time, people aren't
Yeah.
gonna be checking because it's like, man, it's been green all the
I
time.
just look out my window.
you
Why don't you even
would, you
look?
would be surprised
I can
the
see-
amount
I
of
can
people
see
that
the
call up
inversion.
here on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And you get your ones that call here every day because they don't want to get that letter. They got it a few years back. They don't want it again. And 90% of them are your old people. And last year I went to 2 older people's doors and kindly knocked on the door and explained to them, hey, it's a red day, you're not supposed, oh, we're so sorry, we'll get this put out. And they do.
I didn't think of that until Rob mentioned it a minute ago, the attrition of the elder.
So I have a quick
There you go.
clarifying question. You guys mentioned a reader board at the fairgrounds, so are you thinking of using that also to sort of talk about regular
We had
reading?
positive, we just need to follow up and do that.
Ronnie.
It needs to be in the plan, because it should happen, there's no reason, it's,
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm making a note to put it in,
Yeah,
so that's why I
absolutely.
wanted, that's why I wanted that
because
clarified.
it should be, it's a, you know,
It's a very public festival,
Who-
more so than the other one, at the fire station.
Mhm.
yeah.
Who could follow up with it?
I was gonna ask Don, you gonna follow up or should I?
I can, I'll be glad to.
And so then with the flag program, I know there's just a matter of, getting the information, things like that, so is that something that you think will be pursued, or is that something that we need to talk to Roberta about as well?
We need to visit with the superintendent, Will Cahill, I would think. I can do that, or we have a board member here, and the school board.
Okay.
So I don't know what would be the best way to approach that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it to him, but, I guess what he'll wanna know, which I'm still wanting to know, is
Who's paying for the flag?
who's paying for it and who's gonna
I
put it
have
up
a
every day.
suggestion for that.
If the town's gonna put it up, or call the schools, hey, as you're raising your flag today, will you put on the yellow one or put on the green one?
I have a suggestion for that. There is a sewing class. Why can't they make their own
Yeah, that'd be
flag?
super good. And so it's just a matter of,
I saw a class at school.
yeah, for home
I
ec or
believe
whatever,
there's a
so.
home ec class that they sew.
High school.
Why can't they make flags? Yeah, the 4-H kids,
Or give some show
Yeah.
to it.
somebody, and, cause that's a,
We could
they get points
purchase
for
the
that.
materials and let them.
I was gonna
do
say,
any
we
work.
probably still have to.
So it's just more of a plan. And
Yeah.
I think
I don't
it
wanna
can
bring
be
a
worked out.
plan, I wanna support
The
the plan
details
as
can be
a
worked
school board
out.
member.
Don't want to put it all together.
Yeah.
You know what?
We'll put it in
Buy
that
red
grant you
and
guys wanna do for, not
Yeah,
only the
they
shelters.
bumps it
also-
up to 50,000, but that's
Buy red and yellow and green t-shirts and put the clips in them and hang those up. I mean, well, just a suggestion.
But yeah, I think
It's
leave
no
it in there,
different than
Rich.
the
I think it's a
material
good
for the
idea. There are a
flag.
lot
Well,
of
we even
people
talked about
Day in and day out, go through the school system here.
the little boards that you pick up when they collapse and I
Counts.
forget what
The sandwich boards.
Sandwich boards, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
that's,
a couple
you
dozen on
gotta
the
not
sidewalk.
do that no more.
You can check on the
Yeah.
NC chat wagon and see if we have some.
There's complaints coming up on the sandwich boards.
So it sounds like,
So are there state regulations
They don't
on
want them on the
flagpoles?
sidewalks. It's a,
You know, I don't know,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
something we
I'm
certainly
gonna
should
be
check
the
into.
enforcement person here, I'm sorry.
No, but that's certainly something we should check out.
Because federally, there's only certain things. that-
Flags that should fly
Yep,
on the
sure.
same poles.
sure.
what I need.
Well, we can talk to Constable when they do it, because Constable says
Do
something.
they?
Yeah, Constable
Okay.
does run.
Upon meeting all regulations.
So maybe what I just.
Can you, yeah, Rachel, can you check with Climate Falls and?
Yeah, I will.
And then,
I'm making a
if you
note.
can send me anything, as long as I have something prepared, I'll take it to the school board. Or to you at least.
Yeah, because
Yeah, on flagpoles.
her,
That's
her
what-
material at Goose Tracks is not bad at all.
So, okay, so it sounds like we've got some other ideas. I appreciate this. This is good, because it's some additional things we can add to the
And we've got
plan.
enough time before the fall season really starts.
Right.
Not really.
No.
Although I guess September is just around.
I just feel like,
Just
you
feels
know,
like we
within
have
the
time
next
and
couple
it's
of
100
weeks, and then
degrees.
within a month and a half, we're gonna have something for the school.
Firing up the stoves.
So this is helpful for me to kind of add some additional things, and then I just have the summary of, what we've done, and then at the appendix, it's sort of the Erica report that Dawn put together, which is also summarizes what has been happening. So if that's okay, what I was thinking what I would do is I can go back, make these changes, clean up some of the edits. I can send it back out to the group for you guys to look at, and then, if you're comfortable with it, I was thinking maybe we could then finalize it at the next meeting. And then, if you guys are good with that, then proceed and take it to the town council and county commission for their approval. So, just wanna check and see if you all are okay with that process.
Sure.
Alright, good. So then I'll do that, so I'll update these, send it back out to you guys so you can see what changed, and then get this at the next meeting. So then, I guess maybe we could even talk about having the next meeting. That works for you all.
So, can I just throw out a couple more things?
Oh, sure, yes, please, sorry. I
Okay.
keep rolling around and I keep.
Well, and I'm not sure how this fits in, but our ordinance does provide for fines,
Mhm.
which we haven't implemented as far as future efforts. I'm not quite sure. Acknowledging that might show our seriousness in implementing our ordinance, or maybe that's not appropriate.
And who does the fine? That is one of my questions. Do I find them? Who finds them?
The town of Lakeview
The town
and
of
the county
Lakeview.
of Lake, I would think it's a group effort. Kingdom Advance was that, we have an agreement with
So do
a
we
working
have-
agreement, and so it could be probably
So-
include both letterheads or something.
So with that, do we have repeat offenders who we know and we're not getting them to comply when there's, I mean, again, 3 red days, 3 yellow days,
This year with
There
it
wasn't
being
much
my
to
first year and still
enforce.
learning,
right?
I didn't have any problem talking to the people. I know Amy had a few repeat offenders, but it was also really the first little bit when she had come into, and she had issues with people. But as people, we still have people that are angry and not happy about this. And so you worry about that because, someone's gonna throw a log through your car window because they see you drive by, so they automatically assume it's you that's driving around checking this. When in doubt, it's really, somebody's looking out for these fireplaces. And people they were good to me this year. I didn't have anybody yell and scream at me. I just kindly asked them, hey, to keep our numbers down and to keep our wood stoves, or what you're doing, please do not burn on these days. We do not have the exemptions anymore.
Right, so I think, with the
I think
fines,
that's
it's sort of that, you have that tool to use if you choose to use
Right.
it. And I think right now, what's been most effective, as you mentioned, is just talking to people, and then people seem to be willing to listen and comply.
We all have to abide by the rules
Right.
too.
And
When I had it, I had to.
Right, so I think, if anything, maybe what we can do is we can just mention that there is that fine option, but that right now, what has been working is you're just talking to people and just say, but there is still that option to exercise it if.
Right.
if
And
And I think I
it's-
bring it up because we're in a serious position
Mhm.
to let our community know that we've had our exceedances for the year, and we're going into another season, and it's going to affect all of us if we exceed and jeopardize ourselves in going into
Through
payment.
dissemination
Well,
of
that's-
information,
yeah.
just tell
You
them
bring up
this
a
is
good
the
point,
story.
because if 17, where we're close right now, turns into a 13,
Mhm.
it's gonna affect us for 5 years. And
Mhm.
so, that's not something we can mess around with. So that's why it's like, I agree, I mean, we need to be
We were
more.
lenient the first couple of years, but this year we're
So-
gonna have to.
So
Right.
if our numbers can stay down and we keep it, because we're still working off a really good 15 and a 16, so if 17 can be below, we'll have 16, 17,
Right.
18 will be.
So maybe another thing is to, outside of this is, because I think a lot of good ideas have come out of this, and I think there's a lot of things that can be implemented, is maybe have a separate, meeting outside of this, so not everyone who wants to be, doesn't have to be, or if they do, great, you know, just with the town, definitely with the town and the county, and give us, say, okay, what do we want to do for this next coming season? You know, we talked about some ideas and, you know, try and
Do
like
an
kind
actual
of.
action plan.
Yeah, like an actual action, implementation to implement some of these things, because I think these are all great ideas, it's just a matter of, you know, getting the time and giving you the support that you need to do this, and, you know, and we definitely want to help, so, I mean, I'm more than happy to come back and say, all right, let's get this going, let's.
But to have it well spelled out, like Don's asking for,
Yeah.
who's gonna.
Yeah, and I think that's really
Whose
critical.
letterhead's that gonna be on, whose signature's
Yeah.
at the bottom of the page, and who's really gonna take it to the courts and then actually assess the fees.
So, yeah, that and other things.
Yeah.
So they do have an enforcement program with fines in private.
So just maybe some information from Congress.
Yeah, so I'll make a note
They
of
don't,
that too.
they don't fine any people, but
Yeah.
they help.
But just to
There's
see how
some
that
that's a
process works, who
deterrent
handles
anyway.
it
It's
from the beginning
a
in.
tiered, staggered, there's some people who have been fined multiple
When,
times.
and when I talked to Oak Ridge, I can never remember his name.
Mayor Jim Coy.
No.
The enforcement guy?
Mhm.
Oh, I know you're talking about, can't remember his name.
He, I believe, is the one that does the fines. And he does what I do here. But they're really strict. Like, you don't even get a warning. You just get a fine.
Right.
Well, there's no warnings whatsoever.
And they had to crack down, because they were facing some more serious issues. But to be respectful of everyone's time, because I know you guys probably have to run too. Oh, no, and I don't mean to cut you off, because you may have some other ideas as well.
That's fine.
So I guess I'll just take a quick break and say, if any of you need to leave, please feel free to do so, because I definitely appreciate your time. Otherwise, I think you need some other ideas too, so if
Well, I'm-
you can stay or whatnot, I don't want to cut you off either. So I just want to sort of stop.
I just have one more. so-
Okay, I just want to stop and say, if
If that
any of you
helps.
guys need to go, you know, feel free to go, and those who want to stay, fantastic. So.
Jess, are you still on the line?
Yeah, actually, I got a question for you and Rachel, and that is from a timeline perspective. You know, with this update, as I recall so far, this is the first update since the PM Advance plan has gone forth. You know, there's a 5-year term for PM Advance, and Region 10 is being kept at bay, if you will. What are we seeing on the horizon as it relates to the EPA? What word is DEQ getting from Region 10 in terms of what are they anticipating, what are their goals, their objectives as it stands right now? I mean, as far as, obviously, it's my understanding that PM Advance doesn't necessarily preclude or stop the notion of ever being thrown into non-attainment. I assume that right now, since there's no administrator for the Office of Air at headquarters, that things are probably in flux with Region 10. But what feedback are you all getting from them?
Sure. So this is actually the second update, but year 3 of the 5-year update. But EPA is positive in terms of just the fact that we're still doing the updates and that we're making progress. So they're very responsive to that and very glad that we're still carrying through. You know, things are in flux, yes, and it's, you know, it's hard to predict with EPA right now. But I think in general, this is a good thing, and I think EPA is looking very favorable on it. So, like I said, I think they're happy that the town is continuing, and the county are continuing to do this, and I think if, as we continue to do it, they'll support us.
What are we speaking of the office of Justin Spinelli? Or-
Yeah, Justin. Well, actually, this
He's
around.
been here twice.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
region, you know, helps out, but this actually goes back to headquarters.
To the Seattle.
Yes, actually back to East Coast,
Oh.
North Carolina. So this is, they actually review this
Okay.
and provide comments. And so we work closely with the region and headquarters on it. So headquarters runs this program, so. But yes, in just talking with headquarters, they're just happy that we're continuing to do our efforts, so I think that's a good thing.
And Rachel, is there anything on the horizon where EPA is talking about doing another review of particular airships, if you will, to assess who is going to go get thrown into attainment or non-attainment? Considering the flux they're in, usually they do kind of a periodic review, if you will, for sake of their term.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of been postponed or is in flux.
It is in flux, so they are technically supposed to review the standard every 5 years. They last reviewed it in 2012, so they would be due now. But they have not kind of given any sort of time frame for when they would be coming out with anything new. But I know they are reviewing the health effects data and they're going through their process of, you know, trying to figure out if it does need to be changed. So it's probably not for another year or two at least, to change it if they're going to change it, because like I said, it all depends on what the health effects data says. So the health effects data may say just to keep it at 35, or they may say to lower it, so that's sort of the big if. But usually we kind of have an idea of what EPA is going to do, because they send out documents ahead of time, and so when that happens, then we definitely let communities know, hey, this is what EPA is looking at, just so you know. Nothing's final yet, but you can comment on what they're doing. But just to answer your question, I'd say that's at least another year or two out.
Okay, I'm just curious, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, did you still have?
I don't know how appropriate this is, and I have two council members here. So I don't know if it belongs in the plan or not, but from my perception, having been involved in this for some time, I would like the town to consider, initially with the money from the EQ, the air quality coordinator position was a part-time position that solely did air quality. I think that gave it a certain emphasis and focus that person spent their entire time. I think having that switched over to the town recorder position, it's my feeling that, or opinion, that the town recorder position has too large of a workload, so that maybe the amount of time that was spent when it was part-time, we had more, we accomplished more because there was just more time. So I just wanted to.
There was a pretty devoted department, like you say, in air quality, and the little cubicle there was nothing but, and so it's transitioned through the years.
Combined with another, yeah.
And that's been on the back of my mind, is that the town has taken the lead and the expense, and the county hasn't really contributed. Maybe the county needs to contribute some to funding the position. Just my thoughts. Guess somebody wants to make a request to the county.
So Janine, I appreciate those comments, and, we've obviously got Don sitting here, but I think a lot of that's gonna resonate most with Roberta. I mean, she's got a few ideas that she's talked about, one of which would be a nuisance position or a part-time, a couple other different positions. So, rolling this all together, and I'm not sure where we're at with, our finance manager as well, that whole situation, but certainly, yeah, I mean, if you could follow up with those comments with Roberta, I think.
Okay.
And then, pull a counselor or two in, we'd like to discuss those things, but, with the budget that's pretty tight already, and with not wanting to grow staff because we financially can't afford it, it's just, a matter of, what assignments need to be made and followed up with, and.
Sure.
But I absolutely agree, I mean,
Yeah,
if we're serious about this, we need to stay focused on it and make sure that someone isn't, it's one of your other duties assigned, it is one of your main duties assigned to kind of head this up and make sure that the program's going well, because it is it affects the whole community, not, especially economically.
And you're absolutely right. I really don't, my only information is in the beginning with our agreement with DEQ, and it was $15,000. And my recollection is that paid the salary. And of course, with the agreement, that was part of what we agreed to spend it on.
Yeah.
Well, and it was also for the
And
air
I-
quality announcements and dissemination of information.
Oh,
It was not,
absolutely.
it was not just strictly the payroll, right, but I think it did have a certain amount.
Right. And so how the budget works now and how that was morphed into combining with another position, I'm not privy to any of that.
Yeah, and I don't remember, I wasn't on the council at the time, a lot of those agreements were made, so I don't know the particulars of Mike's.
About 15 years ago, it was free me too. So,
What is the funding for non-employee public? Where does that money come from?
I don't know, that's why we just need to follow up with Roberta, see what she knows about that.
Just back in my chest, that needs to be,
I haven't looked at the budget since June, so.
needs to be a county-town partnership.
Cool,
Yeah.
awesome.
If I'd like that proposal to my two colleagues.
I was gonna say, you gotta get it past your two colleagues too.
Well, if I propose it,
Are
it'd be nice to come from a neutral party.
Yes.
are we too far into the current budget process to get that implemented for,
Well, we always ask
No
for
resolutions.
some contribution, and then do it on in the next budget cycle. We'd always cough up $10 or
Thanks, Kim.
$15. A few thousand there, a few thousand there.
okay.
Start the campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's 100% increase each year, and
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're talking, Mike.
And that comes back to another thing. The town has an ordinance, the county has an ordinance. I can't stress to get them as common as possible, but they don't always mesh perfectly. And I see right here under page 4, 3.1, and I need to go back and revisit the county ordinance. It's been a couple of years since I've looked at it. Last sentence of the first paragraph, in November 2016, the extension program that allowed low-income sole-source homeowners to burn even on yellow and red days was no longer offered within the town limits, but it's still offered in the county urban growth.
I think that was at that time, that was, we weren't dictating to outside of the jurisdiction of the boundary line. So it might be that it was stressed to those people that lived outside. So I don't know that it hurt anything, the absence of, but it might, you might check into that.
Because Don, you're not going outside of town limits.
No,
Yeah.
Because I did, okay, so my drive was out to, instead of going right up towards the old greenhouse, take a left, what road is that? I'm sorry. I
Guys
apologize.
Guys.
Guys Lane, and they go down and around, and you can see right through there, and you can see the town. So you pick the smokiest part, and that's where I went first. And I could see where I needed to go by the, where the smoke was most visible. So I would hit that part first.
When I say smoke that you can see rising
Rising out
above the
So,
trees.
yes, and so I would hit that, and 90% of the ones that I had were at the south, anywhere between the middle to south end of town. Then I hit the north end of town, and I went and knocked on a couple of people's doors, and they were more than kind to put their fires out. They had actual monitor fuel too for their backup, and they just flipped it on.
It's one of those days you have to do it today.
Yeah, I'm sorry you didn't make the phone call, for future reference, please make the call, here's the number.
But I think we should have the opportunity, whomever it might be, whether it be a county employee or whatever, to knock on a few doors outside of our town boundaries, if that's a limit to our jurisdiction. We need somebody knocking on doors.
Yeah.
In the urban growth area, that's what the PM Advanced Plan is, so.
So,
The thing come down to is equity. If I'm living on one side of the street in the county and I burn wherever,
Yeah.
and you're living on the other side, that's not equity.
That's where my problem comes in, is South Ninth.
In the south end.
Well, sure,
And it's always been.
Because
Sure.
across the street is county, but only some of it. Some of it's
Yeah, there's some
annexed
of it that is, yeah.
into town, and it is crazy.
Causes conflicts, and people want to know
Yes.
why.
But the
but
application
most of what's in the town limits south of Ninth is industrial, so.
But if they all receive a
some of
notice,
it.
a letter from the county
Yeah.
or the town, whichever it can be, or
So-
both together, it should be a working agreement with both, the logos on the top of the letterhead.
and
And
now,
So last year, we had Forrest Bradley down by the new preschool. Forrest Bradley came in, Baker came in, and then we've got other people that are bringing applications that want to annex in, that are down there. They want to annex in and be part of the town and get the water services, because all we have is the sewer. And then now some of them want to come in and hit off the geothermal, so it's like, they want that geothermal.
we've got a long list of people that want.
Oh, yes, so, It's just one of those things where you try to figure out who's what and who's where, and if they're in town, out of town. I mean, it took me a long time to figure out who were those in town, but by doing the water, I figured, okay, so we'll look at the water bills. Are they in town, out of town? Do they have the out of town rate? Do they have the in town rate? Then I'd go double check those houses driving by last year, and that's how I had to figure it out.
Just for you to knowledge, there are many areas within the immediate urban growth boundaries that we provide our services, but we don't, they're not a part of our community through annexation.
The base program comes from, the attainment area is town and urban growth boundary. And we need to be consistent, and each partner needs to step up. I need to work on that for the county side.
So, last time this group really met, prior to 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a nuisance code enforcement person with the county as well, and so there may be some with this ordinance that may fall into some of what she's covering, that she may be able to spend some of her time, especially during the winter when, once there is snow on the ground, not gonna be looking for trash and tall weeds and stuff like that, so some of her time might be able to be focused on some of this. But that's something, again, that maybe Ken and Roberta and Don can all work with Aileen on, see if that will work well. As a possible solution without increasing the salary or position.
You have a nuisance?
We have a nuisance, we have a full-time nuisance code enforcement.
That's a job.
So how did suburban water play into all that when they took that over? How did that play in? Did you guys make them do an annex agreement? Do you know?
I don't
Are you
understand.
talking on the north end of town?
You're speaking of the north end of town?
The Lakeview Suburban Water District.
The-
Like Sunny Slope and south?
Yep.
I think that there is some material that is included in there in regards to annexation in the future, but it needs to be reviewed, and I think the town's looking at all of the areas surrounding us in regards to where we provide sewer and water services. We don't provide sewer to the area that you're
No.
speaking of.
So
we're not-
remember they took over the water district, which would be west of town and south?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
How did that play out?
that's what I'm,
Oh, yeah.
because it
That-
doesn't,
you
the
were
district
there.
doesn't exist anymore, so
No.
something.
The city took it over, and
That's
I'm
when
just
you
curious
were
how
on the,
that
that's
played
when you were
out.
on the council, Rob, is that?
It's a mess out there.
Needs to be.
It's a mess. I don't know. There's no plan for replacing and repairing that out there either.
Which area is it now?
It was mostly west and
South of town.
south of town.
Like south of Ninth is what you're saying?
Mhm,
And on the
mhm.
west side of 395?
Yeah, there's quite a,
Suburban sanitary district.
yeah.
Seems to me.
All right.
So in other words, you're supplying utilities out there, but there doesn't seem to be a firm commitment to annexation. But when you start pushing them on, you're gonna have to replace what's there, because I know there's some real issues.
So I think we're good. No, I don't, well, I don't wanna keep you guys later than, I mean, because we're all kind of your time at this minute, so.
The next meeting
Oh, next
time?
meeting.
Oh, yeah, so next meeting, that's the last thing. So should we look at the end of next month perhaps? Is that a good time for everyone again?
I would go on
About the 20th?
for that meeting in Bend.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's a 1 week to, so I was thinking maybe the 20th?
As long as it's not around any hunting season, we're good.
Yeah, it's.
So then,
19th?
we can look at the week of September 18th, 19th, or like the 19th,
19th, Tuesday?
September.
how does September 19th?
19th,
What time of day? Same?
You want to take
same
time?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, September 19th, does that work for folks?
No,
No?
Carolyn Kennedy's speaking in Portland tonight.
Carolyn Kennedy.
But it's just not gonna be good for me.
Could be recorded.
I already have tickets, thank you.
Oh, Carolyn.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Duh.
Kennedy,
Okay,
I was
so,
thinking,
it's a Kennedy.
yeah, okay, so perhaps September 19th then,
What time?
noon?
Noon,
Same time,
okay.
noon as
Say,
well.
19th.
Mhm.
I thought that was Carolyn Kennedy.
I just will be absent.
Send us armed with
So,
questions.
so maybe send
19th, you said?
a, yeah, 19th.
Send us armed with questions.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make a note to send a reminder. Okay, great.
So you're gonna share with us what the other two commissioners shared with us.
Oh, gosh, hi, thank you, I completely forgot, thank you for that.
Jess, if you're still on, we're wrapping up.
Let's see, what else? So, let's see, they mentioned,
We'll meet again on the 19th of,
so part of what I heard was talking about the wood delivery of the county corrections, and, you know, opportunities for education and outreach of that. So one that was either having a brochure or something to give to the people about burning properly, when that wood gets delivered, and I just was thinking, oh, yeah, that would be good, or if you can have someone, you know, interface with them and just have discussions with them, that'd be even better, but I realize that's a staffing thing that, you know, they didn't suggest, but I kind of took another step. Let's see, oh, and then their thought was just, you know, with all the wood out in the forest, maybe, and I think we've talked about this many times, at least in communities, having the Forest Service allow people to get free wood from the forest. So, you know, all the woody debris that's out there, that, you know, instead of burning it, just, you know, let the Forest Service have free permits. Instead of, you know, charging people to collect wood, just let people go in there and clear out the wood themselves and things like that.
Is it not just $5 a cord?
what is it, 10? Is it 5 here? It's been 10 outside Sisters.
You're not gonna get a lot of
It's five
people
bucks a
going
night.
into a brush pile and getting bring without. A lot of the problem is that when they do pile like that, get the rocks and stuff and gravel and it runs a saw, so they don't want anything to do with that. They want a standing large pole, they knock it over, cut it out, throw it in the truck.
Okay,
So that, I don't think that would play out.
okay.
So then specifically, we're interested in using the piles?
Or not specifically the piles, but just, or allow people to go in and get free wood from the forest.
Well, the Forest Service can identify through their NEPA process free use areas. I mean, we
It's
could
the worst
encourage
wood in the
them.
whole county. Worst.
The what?
The way they designate those, it's usually the worst wood you can get in the county.
Oh, well, I see.
Yeah, it's something that they don't have to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go where I know it's good.
All right, so that was just another idea. And then just another thing too, it's just more about some of the calls that they get, is just to, you know, when people are upset that they can't burn during the red days and that it's expensive to use alternate sources of heat, is just the bigger picture, just reminding people that they only have to use their alternate source of heat maybe 10 days out of the whole year, and not necessarily all in the same month. So really, the additional cost of them is not that much more. So it's sort of, you know, different sort of educational tool for folks.
Weren't they allowing the compressed bricks during the red days?
They were at one point, yes.
Is that off?
Yes, because I don't think we have the funding or, because I think SCOTUM is giving that out. We don't have that anymore. But I thought that was a good point to bring up, is to remind people that, you know, really, we're only asking you not to burn maybe 10 days out of the year, or it would have been 3 days last year. Sort of.
Well, and showing them the average would be really good too. Simple, you know, flyer or something that says, when you're handing out,
Well,
those,
they've
or
got
when
this
you're going that
different
first time to that
Yeah.
house and saying, hey, look, it's a red
It
day.
says right there.
We'll probably have 3 or 4
Yeah.
more this year. Remember that it's not that much. Here's what we were, and even to show them the numbers that, hey, 17, we're just barely already above it, we really gotta have you help out.
Yeah.
We don't want 13.
Yeah, the emphasis all along was not to get rid of people stoves, but not to go on the red days and other things. That's always been the emphasis there.
So that's what
That's a good
they're
point.
next
That's a good point.
Yeah, that was my point, so.
You never had a good one.
A blunt object is.
Well, I thought, yeah, I got it. Nice seeing you guys. See you
Yes,
next time.
thank you,
Rob.
Rob. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so that's all that else that I have, so a lot of
Thank you.
Cross this out and write.
Thank you.
Or do I just call you?
That's his input.
You head back.
Yeah, they.
Is there a reason?
Yeah,
Should
go
we
ahead.
have Kane outside?
I can have it.
Nice
Oh,
restaurant.
it's okay, well,
Lots of-
yeah,
No, because he
one of the things is
wasn't
just.
here.
sort of-
She was absent.
Nice lodging.
Oh, I just signed it back in,
Uh,
And then later.
Put in
half of